is meant to help adults with disabilities. We're learning state officials have suspended payments to 28 providers. It is the third state program flagged for fraud just this month. Uba Ali has more on the latest in a series of schemes draining the state of Minnesota.
I will do everything in my power to detect and prevent fraud. Payments will be shut off immediately at the first signs of fraud.
That's Department of Human Services Inspector General James Clark in front of the House Fraud Committee last week, promising to weed out bad actors. An executive order from Governor Tim Walz gave DHS additional authority, and today they used it. WCCO obtained the letter the temporary DHS commissioner sent to lawmakers, stating the inspector general has been made aware of allegations of fraud in the MA Integrated Community Supports ICS program. ICS is a Medicaid service that allows adults with disabilities to live independently in community through provider-controlled settings. Since the beginning of this month, DHS suspended payments to 28 providers for billing for services that were not provided, a common thread between the recent federal fraud investigations. No charges have been announced, but state officials say we are taking more aggressive actions to stop payments, including relying on tips and data mining that demonstrate a credible allegation of fraud. It all started with the Feeding Our Future scheme, where $250 million was
We are back. Welcome to the Nate Real Midwest podcast as the podcast continues and the fraud gets deeper and deeper in the state of Minnesota. Quite interesting, but sadly, nobody wants to talk about it. But guess what? I'm here and I'm going to talk about it. It's a system. The system reached out to a system of fraud. Those vulnerable adults with disabilities were taking advantage of the people that want to commit fraud. Let me repeat that. What ICS home provider is willing to open up and serve people with disabilities and mental health issues, but wants to use it for fraud? That is disgusting. What happened to those people who were committing this fraud deserve nothing. The people that were committed this fraud deserve nothing. And the reason why you guys did that is beneath the power that I will speak up. You deserve to be in jail for the rest of your lives. I would say 30 years or to life. Because you took advantage of a vulnerable adult that did nothing to you, and it was okay. What was the money going for? Let me guess. Long vacations, expensive cars. You billed and committed fraud yourself, and you knew that you were doing it. And you thought you were not going to get caught for a very, very long time. Too bad you got caught. Yeah, whatever comes in the dark will always shine in the light. You got caught. There is more to this group home fraud. There is more to this ICS homes that needs to be investigated. I think all ICS homes need to be investigated immediately. September 17th doesn't make an issue, okay? Why wasn't this brought forth during January of 2025? Or when we were back in session? Why all of a sudden now you're picking up on the clues? September, should we count the months from January? February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. 7 months? 7 months you picked up on this. It took you that long. 7 months you picked up on this. And it took you that long to figure out this fraud? It's quite interesting that now there's no special session for this fraud to make sure that we can stop this. But I'll take a guess what the special session for the fraud is going to be. What else is the Minnesota legislature talking about right now? We had the Minnesota House of Representatives speak about gun violence. That's what they spoke about. But we had nobody on September 17th come out and wish these people who were convicted by these fraud an elite apology. No apology at all. No apology. No apology. September 17th was the fraud. Let's take a look at this together, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very curious.
Good morning. It is 10 o'clock. The House State Agency and Fraud Oversight Committee to order. Sorry, I got the wrong thing. I am delighted to welcome you all here. And before we get into the substance of the day, we are going to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Vice Chair Anderson, have you had a chance to review the minutes?
I have, Madam Chair. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Is there a second? We don't need a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. All right. Our first, the order of business today is that we are hearing from the Department of Human Services on the Housing Stabilization Services Program, and then the Integrated Community Supports Program. Then we will move to public testimony and member questions.
I was there.
Chair Pinto.
Grilled them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to raise, there was just a concern I wanted to raise and a question to ask as we get started. So when the hearing was noticed up, or since the hearing was noticed, there have been a couple of significant announcements that have been made. You're running for governor. Congratulations to you. Governor Walz is running for re-election. He's announced that. And I have the concern, this is an incredibly serious issue of integrity of our public programs. Obviously, we've had legislators run for office. That's a regular thing. This committee, though, is different in that it's not a committee that has a substantive policy jurisdiction. What we've done is we haven't had bills referred to us or voted bills out. What we've had is testimony from executive branch folks and questioning of them, and then testimony and questioning from folks who have criticisms of the executive branch. Which raises concerns for me about just sort of the inherent conflict of having that happening in this committee. And I guess as a particular example, just a minor one, I know that the agency was asked to present on these two really complicated programs. We don't have human services expertise in the committee, and they'd asked for 45 minutes. They were told to keep it to 10 minutes. That's obviously, as chair, Madam Chair, you have the authority to control the committee hearing. And also as a candidate for office, there's an inherent conflict there. And so I guess my question is, do you have a plan for, will there be someone else taking over the committee, or sort of what will be done?
Somebody else taking over the committee? Okay, first of all, I wanted to go back on that for a second because I'm quite curious why he said that. That was quite that was quite concerning why he said that. He's complaining that they're getting 10 minutes. Well, give them all the time they need. The Madam Chair is the one that gave the thing. This is very important, and I feel very bad myself that I missed this. I would have been there publicly testifying, literally publicly testifying, because I would have gave these people hell. Nathaniel Olson is not going to be playing nice anymore. So if I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry. But there needs to be answers and questions why this fraud is happening in the state of Minnesota, and why did they do it to vulnerable adults with disabilities, and what makes it okay, and why was it so fun for them to do that. Let me repeat that comment. Why was it so fun? Because I believe when you want to open up a group home and commit fraud, it's because you're doing it for fun. You don't care about the consequences that are going to happen when you're found out. You want to do it for fun because you want the money to fund yourself, to get luxury vehicles, luxury stuff, and leave these vulnerable adults in critical condition. And they are probably thinking right now, why was I a victim of this, and what have I done wrong? And let me tell you, to the people who think that, you did nothing wrong. You are a wonderful human being, and the people that did this to you are disgusting. They are disgusting. You do not deserve to walk the footsteps of Minnesota again. You deserve to be locked up in jail. All of you deserve to be locked up in jail for the fraud that you commit in taking care of these vulnerable adults. And if this happens to the place that I am, bet your bottom dollar, oh, I will be angry. And I am so angry that this happened to the people. And I pray it does not happen to me. But we do not know. And to the social workers that are wanting to take a 15-day break off of everything, quite concerning. Let's continue watching the video.
To avoid that conflict in terms of how the committee works in questioning the
Thank
Walls
you,
Street.
Chair Pinto.
Thank you.
I don't see a conflict. I am an elected representative of my district chairing this committee. The governor is an elected governor of this state. He does not plan to curtail his governor activities, and I do not plan to curtail my elected representative activities. And we have conducted this committee in a completely respectful and tried to be bipartisan way, allowing lots of time for both sides, a lot of questioning. The problem has been when agency personnel come in here and filibuster, and we can't get to members' questions. So I reject that, and I appreciate you raising the concern, but I think you will be gratified by how we continue to conduct the business of the committee. And I would like to note for the record that this hearing has been noticed since last June, and today happened to be the day when I get a call at 7:30 and the department announces they fired the person responsible for housing stabilization services and homelessness, and that person is not available to testify this morning. And then I get a call from the governor's office announcing their fraud package revisions are announced today while we're having our hearing. So if there's any grandstanding going on or trying to hide the ball, it is not by this committee. Thank you.
Chair Robbins, before we begin, may I correct the record?
You may, once we proceed with your testimony, you are not recognized.
Fair deal.
So members, as I was saying, we are going to have a committee hearing today with DHS about the Housing Stabilization Services Program and the Integrated Community Services Program. I'm sorry, I'm going to finish my statement. And so we welcome the commissioner and her staff with us today. Thank you very much. And we welcome our public testifiers. We are going to proceed immediately after I hear from Chair Rarick.
Well, I just wanted to correct the record from not Chair Pinto, but Lead Pinto. Also, the fact that we did hear bills in here related to fraud. So I believe you presented bills in here. So we did hear bills in here, Madam Chair.
Yes, we heard bills. We will proceed. Commissioner Gandhi, welcome to the committee. We look forward to your testimony. This is an ongoing, difficult topic. We really need to dig in and find out all the problems in the Housing Stabilization Program and the Integrated Community Supports Program, and we look forward to your testimony. You may begin.
Thank you, Chair Robbins. Madam Chair and members of the committee, for the record, I am Shireen Gandhi, and I was appointed as temporary commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Human Services in February 2025. I just want to first begin by correcting the record in that, as a courtesy, I have been making calls to our committees of jurisdiction and as well as you, Chair Robbins, as chair of the fraud committee since we were appearing today, to let you know that the appointment of our assistant commissioner has ended. And so that is the proper terminology for a appointed official and the status of employment with DHS.
So this is my question, the status. But if the Madam Chair of the Oversight Committee got a question of that they were fired, why is appointed Commissioner Gandhi, do not call her Department of Human Services, temporary Commissioner Gandhi is saying that they were leave? I believe that the person got fired because the person, I believe, I don't have the facts on the matter. I would like to sit down and interview this person. I believe that this person got fired on an oversight, got fired because she knew about the fraud or she reported about the fraud. Where's the evidence of this? And I don't have the facts, but this is what I believe in. But this needs to be more evidence-based. Let's continue to watch. Oops.
It ended as of yesterday. Thank you again for the invitation to appear in front of this committee. I believe it is the fourth time DHS has been asked to come in front of this committee since its inception in the last legislative session. The agency has been an active partner in the committee's work during the legislative session and over the summer. We've made our staff available to you, Madam Chair, as well as to your committee staff. And we have continued to respond to requests and will continue to do so. And I am appearing today to continue to collaborate with you on this really important topic. I know that there are 3 things at least we can agree on today. Minnesota hates fraud, you hate fraud, and DHS hates fraud. I want to remind everybody.
Let me stop you right there. Disability people like myself hate fraud. Don't forget about that. The vulnerable adults hate fraud. And when they become victims of it, we hate more. Because we're worried that we're going to be victims of it again. That is what is going on. And the problem that she didn't want to say that is quite concerning, ladies and gentlemen. Quite concerning. Boy, I wish I was there testifying there. I would have gave them a public testimony because I sit every day, wake up every day, get into my office, do this research, run this podcast, and this came out. The fraud convention for our United States, the fraud convention of ICS Homes just came out. And I think it was the end of September that news article came out. Don't quote me on that. But that is kind of concerning. And it's already October 3rd. When is the next hearing? Because I'll be glad to be there. This is crazy. This is not okay. This is unacceptable. This is wrong. And I have zero tolerance for this. You guys should have figured out this in January. Why are we waiting 7 months? Why did it take you guys 7 months to figure this thing out? This is a frustrating time for Minnesota. And those vulnerable adults that got caught up in this fraud don't deserve it. And I'm sorry. And I will do everything in my power as a disability advocate to make sure that this will never happen again. This was wrong, people. Wrong. And first of all, she should have made a statement. Commissioner Gandhi, you should have apologized to the vulnerable adults, the people with disabilities. You should abruptly said, I'm deeply sorry for the people who were affected by this fraud, and this is not their fault. But you are saying here nonsense. That should have been your first statement. these vulnerable adults apology. Oh gosh, I hate Minnesota. I really do. Let's continue.
That DHS is taking a zero tolerance approach to fraud. We are committed to program integrity, and we are committed to fighting fraud. And people who are stealing from public programs are really harming the people who are most in need of those programs.
Exactly.
And we are committed to continuing our enhanced investigations, our enhanced data analytics, our quick investigations and quick and thorough, and engaging law enforcement partners to prosecute these criminals, because that is the separation of our duties. We are an investigative arm, and then the law enforcement does the final investigation and prosecution. Criminals and the various schemes they've concocted have become more coordinated and sophisticated, and it's time for us to catch up. While single actors and individuals used to be more of the norm, now what Inspector General Clark is sharing with me and our law enforcement partners are sharing with us is we are seeing more organized bands of providers gaming the system in concert. Since I took the helm at DHS 7 months ago, every level of our agency has been engaged in the investigative work to fight fraud. Our old processes that were based on the type of fraud we used to see are not sufficient for these coordinated schemes. In the 7 months that I've been in this role, I have been engaging teams from across the agency in this intensive work to fight and prevent fraud, to strengthen our internal controls. We've done a lot of work, but there is a lot more to do. And we will continue to be transparent about what we're finding and what more we have to do. After the past few months, we've also been working across the enterprise with other agencies and the governor's office to identify additional tools and steps that we can take to prevent criminals from trying to exploit our programs that serve vulnerable adults and children in Minnesota. The executive order issued by the governor today gives DHS additional authority to move forward with disenrolling inactive providers, putting a temporary moratorium in place for new provider enrollment, creating unique identifiers for providers to track across programs, referring bad actors to the Department of Revenue to investigate tax fraud, and creating a statewide OIG work group using our new data sharing capabilities and more. In terms of your request for information on our two programs, Housing Stabilization Services is a Medicaid service. It is distinct, separate from the state-funded housing support program that provides rent assistance. The Medicaid service helps people with disabilities find and keep housing with using various methods. It is for Minnesotans who are 18 years of age or older with incomes at or below 150% of the federal poverty level. We have approximately 21,000 individuals and 1,800 providers roughly that are enrolled. There is a handout on this program, and with the short time frame, I'm going to leave it at that for Housing Stabilization Services. For Integrated Community Supports, or ICS, this is also a Medicaid service enacted by the legislature in 2019, providing supports to adults 18 or older living with disabilities. ICS allows people to live independently in community through residential, provider-controlled apartment settings. As of late August, there are 260 ICS providers and 487 approved ICS settings, covering about 2,800 individual ICS units. ICS fills the gap in the service continuum between a person living in their own home and more restrictive settings such as group homes and assisted living, which the state has been moving away from as assisted living models geared for older adult populations don't offer as much client choice in how or if the clients receive services. So that's briefly an overview of those two services, and I would like to ask Inspector General Clark to talk about the fraud schemes that we are seeing.
Thank you. Welcome to the committee, Inspector General Clark.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm a little under the weather this morning, so bear with me if I'm coughing. I'm James Clark, and I'm the Inspector General at the Department of Human Services. I came to DHS in late March, but I'm no stranger to Medicaid fraud. Before coming to DHS, I spent nearly a decade at the Attorney General's office where I investigated and prosecuted civil, administrative, and criminal Medicaid fraud actions. The past 6 months at DHS has increased my passion for fraud prevention work, and like the Commissioner, I take a zero tolerance approach to fraud in these programs. I want to be very clear on this point. I will not tolerate any fraud in our programs. I will do everything in my power to detect and prevent fraud. Payments will be shut off immediately at the first signs of fraud. All credible allegations of fraud will be referred to law enforcement, and I will do everything in my power to kick fraudsters out of our programs. I also want to be very clear on another point. Greedy people and businesses have learned how to exploit our programs. It's an unfortunate reality, but this work is serious and challenging, and I sincerely want to partner with you all and everyone else responsible for Medicaid oversight. We have a shared responsibility, the legislature, managed care organizations, law enforcement, and quality providers that are doing good work. I want to work with everybody on these serious and challenging issues to find real solutions to these problems. I also want everybody to know that fraud is getting more complex and sophisticated. At the Medicaid fraud unit at the AG's office and here at DHS, we're seeing webs or rings of connected providers that are working together to commit fraud. I've seen indications of fraudulent AI-generated healthcare records. There are entire agencies as opposed to individual employees committing fraud. That means that fraud is the business model. It's not a rogue or one-off employee that is committing the fraud. I've also seen businesses committing fraud that have tentacles throughout the Medicaid program, right? When you see a HSS provider committing fraud, they may also share ownership with an autism provider, an adult daycare center, an arms provider, right? So you can see tentacles of fraud throughout the department. It's complicated and it's a difficult problem to solve. As for housing stabilization services fraud schemes, I have not seen any unified HSS fraud scheme. What I've seen are schemes are varied. I've seen billing for services when the recipient has never heard of the business. I've seen overbilling, for example, billing us for 2 hours for a short phone call. I've seen providers not having any documentation to support services that were provided. I've seen also billing for non-reimbursable services, such as billing us for employee travel time, which was not reimbursable under the program. Also, I've seen upcoding, right? Billing for a more expensive service. So saying you provided a consultation and billing for a consultation when actually you provided a less expensive service like a transition service. I would just like to know, before we go to the next slide, as for HSS, we have 120 open HSS investigations. We've suspended payments to 115 providers. These providers have been sent to law enforcement. Law enforcement's been notified about these providers. As part of our investigations into the program, I've asked our federal contractor to do a top to bottom review of HSS billing data to detect any anomalies that signal fraud, waste, or abuse. And I expect preliminary results next month from that top to bottom review of HSS billing data. These investigations are complicated and they are time consuming. We have to go line by line through billing records. We have to review treatment records, and we have to contact recipients to see whether or not services were provided. It's complicated, takes a lot of manpower and hours. We are working as hard as we can and as fast as we can to shut off payments everywhere that we see fraud. Go to the next slide.
I'm sorry, just to quickly refer, how many have you stopped payments on to date?
115 providers.
Chair Robbins.
I know, I would kick it back to the commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner Gandhi.
Thank you, Chair Robbins. This slide provides a high-level overview. As Inspector General Clark shared, he and I have both been working to understand the timeline of what has transpired with HSS so that we can make changes to DHS's internal controls and processes, as well as to keep taking quick action to identify and investigate fraud, stop payments as fast as possible, and make referrals to law enforcement to prosecute these criminals to the fullest extent of the law. So this timeline provides high-level information on HHS actions, reforms, and new processes. There's a lot more items behind this, and if we want to get into that during questions, we can. But at a high level, I want to flag on this slide that we began investigations in the fall of '23. We began engaging MCOs and CMS to investigate this in the spring of '24. Patterns began to emerge throughout '24, but again, it still was not what we learned by employing enhanced.
All right, I'm back. I love this. Wait a second. The investigation began in 2023. All right. More evidence uncovered in spring in 2024. Okay. Reforms paused in 2025. Why didn't the news report this? Why? Fall of 2023, investigations started. More evidence uncovered in spring of 2024. DHS, CMS programs investigated tips, patterns emerged throughout of 2024. I moved in 2022. It was 3 years I've been with this company. DHS steps up the oversight throughout 2025. Bold actions were taken in August of 2025. This bold action right here, these bold actions that I'm pointing at, or I don't know if you guys can see with my mouse. I don't know. This is quite concerning. I'm sorry, but there needs to be accountability that was taken over. Let's continue to watch the hearing.
Advanced data analytics. So then in 2025, during legislative session, as I began to see the numbers, the amount of spending that was happening at Housing Stabilization Services and how that compared to the forecast that we had expected, I asked our teams to begin doing data analytics and we had also received some vague, credible allegations of fraud, but none specific to a provider. I mean, we had the regular community tips that were coming in, but we were told that there was widespread fraud, but not who it was. And that was in the spring of 2025, this year, after I became temporary commissioner. So that's when we went to our data analytics team, as I've discussed with you before, in the Inspector General's office, and said, let's start doing the types of analysis that credit card companies would do. Let's look for trends. Let's look for outliers. We don't have all the tools for predictive analytics, but that's what that's where we would like to get to. And so that's where that information provided Inspector General Clark and his team information, a priority list to look into because this is very time intensive and takes many hours and a lot of work with our old outdated systems and lack of robust fraud fighting tools. When I saw that in April, I decided that both HSS and EIDBI need to be designated as high-risk Medicaid programs. That gave us additional administrative tools to act on those programs. We are required to give 30 days notice. So in early May, we gave notice to providers that those programs were going to be high-risk programs effective June 1. As we continued to look into what we were finding in housing stabilization and hearing from Inspector General Clark, as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office, well, maybe it's more the Attorney General's Office. I'm not sure if the U.S. Attorney provided this feedback to us, but both the Attorney General's Office and our Inspector General's Office felt overwhelmed by the amount of fraud that we were seeing in the Human Services Housing Stabilization Services Program. And so at that time, I made the unprecedented and very difficult decision to ask CMS to terminate that program.
Thank you, Commissioner. If I could just ask, where are we at on that? I know when you requested the termination, there was a 30-day period and people could provide comment, and then there was another period where they got to review the comments. So when, in fact, will the program be terminated?
Yeah, I can tell you that at the earliest, it will be terminated October 20th. We have to let the 30-day comment period end. And then as quickly as possible, we have been looking at comments that are coming in and reviewing them. But as quickly as possible, we have to take the next steps with CMS to provide them with what we heard. And CMS ultimately will work with us to determine what the final date is.
Thank you. Please just keep us informed on that. Thank you.
Yes, we will.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you. I have a question. You said that you first looked at numbers in the spring of 25, and yet actual numbers about the growth of the services, and yet the growth started years before that. It was 42 million in 21, and it was 74 million in 23, and it was, over 100 million in 24. So, and there were concerns from counties, Hennepin County. So did no one at DHS look at this then until the spring of 25? Because that's what you said earlier.
Yeah,
Commissioner Gandhi.
Thank you, Chair Robbins, and thank you, Vice Chair Anderson. Yeah, I was speaking to my role as temporary commissioner, stepping into this role and having ultimate final authority for these programs and them being properly run. So that's what I was talking about. I know the program areas, the community, others were coming out of the pandemic. We're seeing such a great need for homelessness, supporting people who are experiencing homelessness to become housed. I know there was a lot of attention being paid and DHS being asked to process applications for providers faster. And we, James and I are still, looking into what happened before, more specifically, our appointments in this role ended. I mean, it began.
A very quick follow-up.
No, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Robbins.
You want us to stay here?
No, maybe we'll skip so that that's basically what I said on the other slide. I want to make sure that we keep to the timeline here. So for the past 7 months, we have continued to take bold action. And here is how we are doing things differently at a high level. In March, I brought in a new Inspector General, James Clark, who has a decade-long record, as he shared with you, in prosecuting Medicaid fraud in the Attorney General's office. In April, I designated both EIDBI and Housing Stabilization Services as high risk. That was able to take effect June 1st. That tightened requirements on owners, increased on-site visits, and allowed us to make unannounced visits. We are staffed better. We are more strategic and effective on data analytics as a result of both reprioritizing work of our internal staff and allowing our staff and working on staff capacity surge strategies. Also, the enterprise has come to our assistance, and in September, we were able to bring in 5 additional data analysts from Minnesota Management and Budget, their results management team. And these individuals are trained to look for new patterns and anomalies in billing and payments for state services, and are using AI to supplement their review and find outliers. We started looking at programs in new ways to identify outliers so that we could be strategic with the limited resources we have and focus on where we're most likely to find fraud. We started acting much faster and much more aggressively in looking at the data so that we could rise to the level of finding credible allegations of fraud and stopping payments immediately. As we've discussed, in May, we had 1 Housing Stabilization Services stop payment, and by August, we had 115. That large change came about because on May 9th, we had a meeting with the Attorney General's office and the BCA to talk about fraud and what we could do to act faster with what we were seeing. We had a past practice of waiting to stop payments until investigations had concluded. And investigations are time intensive and were taking too long. So we flipped that. We flipped that and decided we were going to stop payments as soon as there was a credible allegation of fraud, not wait for the investigation to conclude unless our law enforcement partners asked us to not do that because that would jeopardize their investigation. So all of us agreed that that was the right change to make given what we were seeing. And then on August 1st, I asked CMS to terminate Housing Stabilization Services. That process is underway as we discussed. I do want to say before I close on that there is a need for Housing Stabilization Services, and we recognize that. We will be working to provide providers and counties and our partners with resources that people can be referred to when this service is terminated. And we very much would like to work with the legislature, and as James said, with providers, with the community, and others to redesign and relaunch the benefit with the proper controls in place.
So I just wanted to pause the video. So I wish I was there at the hearing, because this is why I want to run in 2026, because I wish I was a representative hearing. So let's just say if I was there or not, let's just imagine I was there. My question for Representative Gandhi is to the victims that were involved in this fraud and the money that they were being taken out. Will these victims be compensated? Because I believe they need to be compensated. I believe lots of money needs to go back to them. And with an apology note, when these disgusting human being people who took advantage of disability people are prosecuted and thrown in jail, that they get an apology from that company. Because not one of the people from the Department of Human Services ultimately got their sincere apologies for these people who were affected by this. Not one person. And that is quite concerning for me. And somebody who's a disability advocate for the state of Minnesota. Not one person got an apology. She amply spoke about, how to stop this. She should have said, I'm truly sorry for the people who are affected by the fraud, who are victims of this. This was not their fault. It was people that were self-centered people that probably used that money to go buy luxury items and took advantage of a disability adult. Upcoming next in the state of Minnesota, the gun control is coming up next. That is quite concerning in the state. Let's go there and look that up right now as the gun control keeps continue with the Minnesota House of Representatives. Minnesota House of Representatives are doing as that they can to make sure that we're all for the American people. Let's go look at what the House Republicans said, and let's look at what the different leaders have said. And I can't wait because I'm ready to get back to work and get this fraud in committee done because they need a voice and I am the voice. So let's go look at the video and let's compare what the Republicans have said and what the Democrats said. Who's all with me? Let's go. We're going to go here. Sorry, let's...
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here with us today. As we have heard for the last month through the media, first of all, and thank you for each one of you reporting. We've heard that the governor is going to be calling a special session. The idea behind that, as he has shared, is due to the tragedy that happened at Annunciation School and Church in that community. And what I'd like to tell you today is, again, as all of you know, the governor is the only person in the state that can call a special session. We are waiting for the governor to do that. I have been in meetings for the last probably 2 weeks on and off, the four leaders and the governor, and we've been in those conversations. And today our meeting was very brief. We, as you saw in the public, the Democrats had put forward parameters that would have really silenced the voice of the legislature to get work done in a special session. I returned an idea, kind of a broad framework that just reiterates, again, Governor, when you call that special session, as you know, House Republicans will show up. We will be there to work. We are fully invested in the work that needs to happen. We will do that. We also want to give the legislature the full process to hear bills, vet bills, and have them go through the committee process. In the House specifically, we are
All right, that is great. I want to see what the Democrats said about the legislature and what they were saying. So let us go and look what the Democrats said, because it's going to be the opposite of what the Democrats are saying. Let's see. Here we go. 9:30, 3 days. Oh, 720 views for the Republicans media, and only 423 views for the DFL media accessibility. Quite interesting. Why did the Republicans get 300 more views? Makes a lot of sense. Let's continue.
Good afternoon. This morning, Leader Murphy, myself, the governor, put out a offer in good faith to our Republican colleagues to have a special session to address the gun violence we've been seeing across the state and across the country in recent days. That offer included provisions that we feel very strongly about, that the community feels very strongly about, that the families feel very strongly about, including banning assault weapons and banning high-capacity magazines. We also reached across the aisle and picked up some ideas that our Republican colleagues have been saying are important to them, because we do recognize in order to pass any meaningful gun violence prevention measures through the legislature, we will need votes from both Democrats and Republicans. So we came to the table in good faith and put out an offer that we thought addressed all of those issues. But I'm feeling discouraged after listening to my Republican colleagues just now, because I hear on the one hand that we need to have an open process where all legislators can be involved. And in the very same press conference, I heard Leader Niska say that there wasn't a single Republican vote for an assault weapons ban and that he wasn't even going to bring it to the floor. That's not an open process, but it is the truth that there isn't Republican support.
All right, I need to stop there. There's no way that you can get assault. Okay, let me make something clear. There's no way that you can ban assault rifles. You can't. You just can't ban them. We have the right to bear arms in the second Constitution. You can't ban assault rifles and stuff, because if you ban them, somebody from a different state could come up and shoot another school. Somebody from Wisconsin could take assault rifle and come up and shoot another school. The problem is that I'm seeing on this side of the aisle, and I want to be clear about what I want to say, and I'm not going to get I don't want to get into anybody's feelings at all. I'm sorry, I'm going to hurt some feelings because it's going to happen. The Democrats had control of the House and the Senate in 22 for almost 2.5 years. Why on earth did you not bring forth a bill for school security? Why did you rip them all out? If you are so willing and so adamant for gun control, why didn't you bring a bill for school security? I mean, we had a budget, but we went to a $6 billion deficit. We had a budget, okay? But you had the power to bring up school security. But you didn't. So gun control is not the problem here. I'm sorry to say. The problem is you need to be held accountable for the bills that you passed. You could have passed school security. That's what you could have passed. It's both sides of the aisle that I just hope they can just come together. I just really don't want to finish up today. So, let me bring forward something before we closed and stuff. The Department of Human Services needs to do better to tackling this fraud, and it's going to be leading up to a federal investigation. The fraud and the abuse that would happen to the vulnerable adults, to these disability people that were literally taken advantage of with this fraud, are wondering why it happened to me. I don't deserve to be treated like this. And in that hearing, I heard no apology. I didn't. I heard ways that we can protect it. There was no apology in that hearing. But you sit here and think that the vulnerable adults that now need to find another place to live are going to be worried for the same thing. Is Minnesota the right place to run group homes or ICS homes? I do not believe so. Like I say, I say, there are good group homes and there are bad group homes. And right now we're seeing a lot of bad ones. And it needs to stop. So bet my words, in 2026, I will do everything in my power to fight for those disability people and make sure that their voices are heard, that they will never, ever be victims of fraud again. God bless America, God bless Donald J. Trump, and God bless Minnesota, and God bless the United States. This is Nathaniel Real Midwest Podcast.